The scores for F Troop were great. It's better than Star Trek. This is better than Gilligan's Island. Larry Storch was even nominated for an Emmy for his role as Corporal Agarn. The fax machine then beeped. When Larry read the message, he lost it. How could they back out? The show did well for its time, but Warner Brothers was bought by people who didn't care about how well it did. Here's what took place behind the scenes. His birthday is January 8, 1923, and he was born in New York City. But people don't agree on even where he was born. Some say New York City while others say the Bronx. His dad sold things and drove a taxi. His mother worked as a housekeeper, a telephone operator, and the owner of a jewelry shop. The family was Jewish and was just trying to stay alive. Even though their apartment was small, it was Larry's first stop. He would imitate sounds and neighbors, which made his family laugh. He could already do voices that didn't sound like kids by the time he was 6. In the 1930s, New York was full of people, languages, and life. Lawrence took it all in. He would pay attention to how Italian grocery store owners talked, how Russian tailors moved, and how Irish police yelled on street corners. He could copy more than 15 different voices by the time he was 12. He practiced by listening to every talk he could. It wasn't just for fun. It turned into a tool, a skill, and a way to stay alive. By age 14, he was doing impressions at events in his neighborhood. His job would last for more than 60 years. He had no idea it would begin this way. Larry made a friend for life at DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx. Don Adams went on to star in the TV show Get Smart. But it was hard to go to school. His speaking skills were good, so it wasn't that he couldn't keep up. It had to do with money. His family had a hard time during the Great Depression. Lawrence quit school in 1937. He told me once that my family needed money more than I did. Because of that choice, he got into show business before most people. Larry got his first paid job in show business when he was 17 years old, in 1940. It paid $12 a week to open for bandleader Al Donahue for 5 minutes at a Brooklyn band hall. He often had trouble singing because the wind was blowing from the ocean close to the stage. So he relied more on body language and facial movements to make people laugh. The band would take him to restaurants after shows to talk about the business. The word began to get around. This kid could do any sound at any time. Larry was playing in small places in Manhattan by the beginning of 1941. Even though he wasn't making much, he was making something. Larry worked hard in New York's dying theater scene from 1940 to 1942. He did 4 or 5 shows a day at cheap theaters in Harlem for just $2 a night. He had a better chance in the Catskills. He got a spot at Grossinger's Resort that pays $27.50 a week. That's about $550 these days. He put on a show between courses at dinner, which made Jewish tourists laugh out loud. He learned how to deal with a lot of people at once. He kept going even though some nights were rough. His show was just getting going when history stepped in. Lawrence joined the Navy after Pearl Harbor. Larry got on the USS Proteus in 1942. The ship was a submarine tender, a 529-foot vessel that worked in the background to fix submarines. He was on the ship with Bernie Schwartz, who became Tony Curtis, a movie star. During the last few years of the war, they served together in the Pacific. Both were in Tokyo Bay in 1945 when Japan gave up. They were there when the end of WW was made public. After that, their ship helped make the Japanese suicide boats and torpedo boats less dangerous. They really did have a bond with each other. After many years, Larry would show up in 8 of Curtis's movies. Then something happened that made everything different. Larry tried to get home after the war by hitching while dressed as a Navy officer. He thought that someone seeing a sailor would stop. One man did. It was the well-known musician Phil Harris. He picked up Larry and was so amused by his impressions that he turned the car around and drove straight to Hollywood. They finally got to Cyro's bar, where Lucille Ball was waiting in a room by herself to watch her husband Desi Arnaz practice. Harris pushed Larry to do something. He did impressions right then and there. Ball liked it. She told him to take off his uniform and open the show the next night in a suit. Lawrence was no longer a sailor in an instant. He made a living as a comic. Lawrence got a chance to work at national radio in December 1945. It was a last-minute need at the Kraft Music Hall because Frank Morgan, the Wizard of Oz, was sick. Lawrence stepped up. It was like he was Jimmy Cagney, Wallace Beery, or even Frank Morgan himself. It was risky, but it paid off. People really liked it. He was on the show until the beginning of 1946, getting more gigs and even playing at a dinner for President Truman in January of that year. In 1949, TV had taken over, and Larry knew he had to change with the times. It was on Cavalcade of Stars that he got his big break. He was the summer host while Jackie Gleason was off. It was very important. Even though Gleason was huge, Larry was able to handle him. He created figures like Smiley Higgins and 10-year-old Victor, who all had crazy facial expressions. People called him rubber-faced because he could make his face look funny in ways that not many comics could. This guy did more than just sounds. Larry could act with his whole body. After that, CBS gave him his own show in 1953. While Jackie Gleason was on, the Larry Storch Show played on Saturday nights at the same time. There were 10 episodes. The writing group was strong. Few people liked the group that Ray Bloch led, but some did. The sketches were called slow by Variety. Life magazine said he did his best. It didn't last past summer, but that wasn't important. Lawrence had left his mark. People still didn't always know who Larry Storch was in the late 1950s, but that was quickly changing. He made a big change when he went on the Phil Silvers Show. It was 1958. This wasn't just any funny thing. It was very big. 23 million people watched at its peak. That much reach could make or break a career. It worked really well for Storch. He played two different roles: a sailor who cried and a crazy beatnik. Each part showed off something unique. How well he could time things and how quickly his face could go from sad to funny. He became funny, not just played funny. The crying sailor part was so good that it set him up for his most famous role, Corporal Agarn in F Troop, who also cried a lot. But Larry got a lot of attention from another show before F Troop. It was Car 54 this time. Where Are You? That happened from 1961 to 1963. Larry played Charlie, the drunk cop who worked with a lot of crazy New York cops. The show was made by Nat Hiken, who also made Phil Silvers. It's possible that Larry got the part thanks to that deal. He had a messy, likable, and always a little lost personality, but Larry made him stand out. He made the most of the time he had on screen, even when it was short. That was important. That performance showed the people in charge that Larry could make a small part feel big. A lot of the people he worked with later played Grandpa on the Munsters. One of them was Al Lewis. It was a rough and funny show from the Bronx. Larry seemed to be born to be there. Then 1963 came along and changed everything. Larry found himself in the world of cartoons. As the voice of Phineas J. Whoopi on Tennessee Tuxedo and His Tales, a crazy genius who used a magical blackboard to help people solve problems, he became a star. Kids adored him. The adults laughed too. The voice was based on Frank Morgan, who played the wizard in The Wizard of Oz. Most people didn't know this. At first, Larry didn't say anything. They hired him right away because he only did the voice. Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the best became his saying that millions of kids would say to each other at home. The show even had an educational goal to answer kids' questions and teach them through drawings. Larry made school fun before it was cool to do that on Saturday mornings. That was not all Larry did though. In 1960, he took on a huge task. He brought back to life one of the first cartoon characters ever made. Coco the Clown was first shown in Out of the Inkwell in 1918. After many years, Larry brought him back to life. Not just Coco. He did the voices of all four characters in the new show, Larry, Coquette, Coconut, and the bad guy Mean Mo. Between 1960 and 1961, the show had 105-minute episodes that aired on TV stations across the country. It was a big deal in the history of animation. It's too bad that only 3 of those episodes still remain. The rest are gone. But those sounds were just Storch. He did more than just voice characters, he gave them life, personality, and a beat. Larry showed up everywhere at this point. His job wasn't just a part here and there. He was everywhere. From 1954 to 1964, he was one of the most sought-after guest stars on TV. His old resume almost doesn't seem real. He was in a lot of TV shows like The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, Gilligan's Island, I Dream of Jeannie, That Girl, Gomer Pyle, Get Smart, and more. His IMDb awards went up to 249 in the end. That's not a job. That's a kingdom. He even had his own comedy show for a short time in 1953, called The Larry Storch Show. Jackie Gleason chose him to fill in for him during the summer. There were stars like Cab Calloway and Janet Blair on it, but it only had 10 episodes. Larry's time in the Navy even helped him find his way. Tony Curtis was a crew member on the USS Proteus during World War II. That friendship also led to parts in movies. From 1960 to 1964, he was in the movie Who Was That Lady?, Sex and the Single Girl, 40 Pounds of Trouble, and Wild and Wonderful. He played Russian spies, crazy people and everything in between. The people who choose actors knew that Larry Storch would steal the show in 5 minutes. Larry wasn't just another funny face by the end of 1964. Anyone who needed a character with life, spark and passion knew they could count on him. In 1965, when Larry Storch stepped into the dusty shoes of Corporal Randolph Agarn on F Troop, something clicked. He had never planned to become a hero. The figure was only meant to be a silly sidekick. In its place, Larry made him into one of the most memorable TV characters ever. Agarn was not smart. In the cavalry he served for 10 years, 4 of which were spent stuck at Fort Courage. It took him 6 years to become a corporal. But people couldn't stop watching Larry because of his crazy facial expressions, loud reactions, and funny scream. He would slam his Confederate gray hat onto his own men, cry about making up diseases, and then fall into his captain's arms, and sob. "Oh, Captain." One of the most quoted lines from the show was Agarn. "I don't know why everyone says you're so dumb." It was always funny because Larry could turn any insult into gold. He won an Emmy in 1967 for all of his work, which showed that he wasn't just a clown, but a comic genius. A lot of that magic came from how well he got along with Forrest Tucker, who played Sergeant O'Rourke. In real life, they were good friends. On screen, they were con artists dressed in uniform, who used their shady O'Rourke businesses to sell fake Native American items to tourists who didn't know any better. Tucker's big tough presence kept the business in check, but Larry's crazy energy took it to the next level. They weren't like other comedy pairs. Because they were really friends, they were a great mix that worked. Tucker joked that his body felt like Methuselah's in 1986 when he was 66 years old, but his 30-year bond with Larry was still strong. Some people said they looked like mirror pictures of greed and chance. More than 80% of reviews liked how they did when the show first came out. Larry didn't just play Agarn though, he brought a whole family of Agarns to the show, and each one had their own silly personality. He switched between 5 different parts in one episode, from the bad guy Pancho Agarnado to the southern gentleman Uncle Gaylord, all the way up to Pancho's sister Carmen. From French Canadian to Russian and everything in between, he was great at accents because he had done voice acting and worked in nightclubs for years. A few people didn't even know it was all him. His range made a silly joke into one of the best parts of the show, and it gave the writers great freedom to try new things. It wasn't so easy behind the scenes. In 1965, money was tight, so all 34 shows of the first season were shot in black and white. Realistic effects were used on set at Warner Brothers, like the watchtower that had to fall at just the right time. It was hard for the team to find the right balance between true-to-life Old West scenes and over-the-top satire in the first dozen shows. But by episode 13, everything made sense. After that, they hit baseball after baseball. Even though there were no special effects, director Charles Rondo made sure that the physical jokes looked great. Gilligan's Island was full of silly slapstick, but F Troop was more about smarter, riskier entertainment. People began to say that the show was ahead of its time. F Troop still had to fight to get where it was. It got great reviews, more than 80% gave it great reviews, but a lot of people thought it was having trouble in the scores. It wasn't true. 11 million people watched the show in its first season, giving it a 20.4 rating and a 31.3 share, beating out NBC's movies. It came in at number 36 out of 108 at prime time. F Troop ran for 5 seasons with lower numbers than shows like That Girl. Was ruled wrong, what's wrong? It wasn't right for the time. In 1965, people wanted safe shows with magical tricks or stories about loving families. Some watchers didn't like how F Troop made fun of American myths. If ABC moved it to a better time slot after Batman and numbers only went down a little to 19.2, it still got the axe. Fans finally saw what they missed the first time around thanks to reruns that came out years later. The show got better color in September 1966. Everything changed. The makeup and bright uniforms stood out even more, and Larry's facial reactions went even further over the top. Everything looked 10 times funnier now, every eye roll, every slapstick fall, and every twitchy panic attack. ABC changed the show to Thursday nights after Batman, in the hopes that the new time and color would help it even more. It worked for some time. It was said by critics that shows like F Troop, I Dream of Jeannie, and Gilligan's Island got better when they added color to their visual jokes. It was the ideal setting for Larry. The way he moved and the way his face looked like rubber were perfect for it. Then one of the strangest shows ever aired. F Troop presented a made-up Beatles-style band called the Bedbugs on February 9, 1967. Agarn left the army for a short time to lead them. What's the twist? There were real people in the band. It was The Factory, a real Los Angeles band with Lowell George on guitar and Richie Hayward on drums. George and Hayward would later form Little Feat. They played Mr. Tambourine Man in Lemon Tree, and Melody Patterson, who played Wrangler Jane, even sang. Even though the music wasn't as good as on some other shows, it became a cult favorite among music fans who later saw the talent that was hiding in plain sight. F Troop was shut down even though it did well in its second season, finishing 40th out of 113 shows. Why? Cash. The cost of going to color was high, and Warner Brothers' new owners, 7 Arts, were not pleased. They thought it cost too much and took up too much room on the Warner Ranch. The business side won out even though it came after a strong show like Batman and didn't have much competition. It was just not worth the money, according to producer William Orr. It was too early to end F Troop like the Munsters and the Addams Family, with only 65 episodes. The cancellation of F Troop wasn't just a cancellation, it was sabotage wrapped in chaos at work. Around the end of 1966, Jack Warner gave 7 Arts Productions his huge share of Warner Brothers for an amazing $32 million. That deal not only changed who owned the studio, but it also stopped all TV shows that were filming there. Warner had quit by July 1967. Productions went into freefall after the change. One of the first people to die, F Troop. Forrest Tucker, one of the stars of the show, later said that the sale was the end of F Troop. He thought that the show would have been around if the merger hadn't happened. It wasn't just the actors' anger coming out. There were numbers on the page. F Troop had just made the pricey switch to color, which is something networks only do if they think a show will do well in the future. Behind the scenes though, Ben Kalmanson, a top executive at Warner Brothers who was said to hate TV, saw the merger as a chance to kill off hit shows and make money from reruns instead. Hope came back for a short time in February 1967. On February 24th, the Boston Globe said that F Troop wasn't going to be cancelled. It was just changing to 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. That was a sign of life for the group and the fans. Nobody could have seen the deception coming. From Karate with Love had a 24.1 rating when it aired on the show 2 weeks before, on January 5, 1967. It got more viewers than Bewitched, which got 22.9, making it the night's top show. By February 23, another episode had one of the top 3 numbers in the show's history. That season, F Troop had won its time slot 11 times and was doing better than Batman, which was airing right before it. After that, there was quiet. There was no follow-up from the network or news of a renewal. There was just a quiet cancellation that caught the group by surprise. They thought they were getting ready for a time change, not to say goodbye. Larry Storch and the other players were shocked. The ratings were good. There was a lot of audience allegiance. Still, F Troop was dead. In the 1966-1967 season, F Troop had a good 19.2 rating and a 31.3 share. It got ranked 39th out of 113 network shows. That wasn't just good. Some people really liked it more than shows like Star Trek, Gilligan's Island, and Lost in Space. A show like Gilligan's Island got only an 18.1 rating. Still, ABC revived 11 shows that did even worse. It didn't make sense. It wasn't about being well known. It was about government. After the fact, TV expert Hal Erickson said that Kalmanson would have won even if F Troop had made it into the top 10. Rates didn't matter to a man who never thought TV was important. No proper farewell was given, it was a quiet death. The Boston Globe lied to everyone with that Wednesday night move story, which led to the cancellation. With the way the show was going, canceling it didn't make sense. Unless you were in the boardroom. Larry Storch never went into detail about his initial reaction, but it was clear he loved playing Corporal Agarn. It was the role he would be remembered for, long after he died at age 99 in July 2022. He kept that role for the rest of his life, never separating himself from it, and never acting like it didn't matter. It did. In fact, F Troop earned Storch one of ABC's few Emmy nominations in a year when the network barely had anything in the top 30. That alone should have kept the show going, but it didn't. After the show ended abruptly, Storch didn't disappear. He changed. By 1969, he was a top voice actor in animation, and his skill with accents and characters made him a perfect fit for Saturday morning TV. He gave voice to figures on The Pink Panther Show and Tennessee Tuxedo and His Tales. He also worked with famous people like Mel Blanc and June Foray. From Merlin the Magic Mouse to Cool Cat, he played them all. He even brought a new version of Coco the Clown to life. After that, in 1969, he joined the group of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? It was the beginning of a 40-year run in animation. In 1975, Storch and Forrest Tucker worked together again on The Ghostbusters, a strange CBS kids show. It was a cult hit, even though it only had 15 episodes. On the show, Storch and Tucker played paranormal detectives who worked with a gorilla named Tracy to solve silly riddles. It made fun of Mission Impossible, and each show had silly monsters like Count Dracula and the Mummy. It was silly. Even though it was weird, it worked and brought back the old F-Troop spirit. Columbia made their own Ghostbusters movie in 1984, but in 1986, Filmation brought back Storch's version as a cartoon show. That's how long the first one lasted. Then there was the big screen. Storch got a part in Airport 1975, the follow-up to the blockbuster Airport in 1974. He played Glenn Purcell, a supporting figure on a Boeing 747 that was going to crash. Charlton Heston, Karen Black, George Kennedy, and even Gloria Swanson in her last movie part were all in the movie. It was the 7th most successful movie of that year. Even though that group was heavy, Storch did well. He could do more than just be funny. He was also good at building dramatic stress. Larry Storch did something no one thought he would do at age 57. He changed the type of silly roles he usually plays and made a scary movie called Without Warning. The movie was made for only $150,000, and Storch played a scoutmaster who didn't know what to do when he faced an alien. It wasn't just any sci-fi movie. It had future stars like David Caruso and famous players like Jack Palance and Martin Landau. Rick Baker, an effects genius, made the scary alien head mask for $19,000, which is about 13% of the budget for the whole movie. It was shot in the Californian woods. The movie didn't do very well at first, but it became a cult favorite over time. It gave Storch a chance to show that he could do more than just make people laugh. The next year, in 1981, Storch was in the middle of a lot of trouble in Hollywood with Blake Edwards' dark comic SOB. He played a crazy spiritual leader named Professor Krishna Mansa Kasari, this time. The movie made $14.8 million at the box office, even though it cost $12 million to make. Stars like Julie Andrews, Robert Preston, and William Holden were in it, but they sadly died soon after shooting. The whole movie made fun of the movie business and was based on Edwards' real-life fights with company bosses. Once more, Storch stood out. His strange offbeat part stood out even in a movie full of big names. Though he was getting close to 60, he was still in high demand. Then there was a big moment on stage. Arsenic and Old Lace was brought back to Broadway in 1986, when Storch was 63 years old. There were more than 220 performances at the 46th Street Theater. He played with greats like Abe Vigoda and Gene Stapleton. Once the show was over in New York, he went on a very hard 10-month tour across the country. Most of the original group had left by that point, but Storch kept going strong. During his trip, he shared the stage with people from Happy Days and WKRP in Cincinnati, Gary Sandy. People loved him, and when he went back to live theater, it showed that he still had great comedic timing and an unbeatable personality. Even after decades on TV. After 14 years, Storch was still going strong at age 77. During this tour, he played Chief Sitting Bull in Annie Get Your Gun, which starred Reba McEntire. It began in July 2000 and ended in June 2001. People liked his show because it was funny without falling into stereotypes. Variety said he gave the character a smart turn, a wink that made people laugh. The show went to great places, like the Music Hall in Dallas and the SUNY Performing Arts Center in New York. Storch, who was always humble, joked that he didn't know much about horses before he was cast, just that they bite from both ends. He kept up with 8 shows a week. He is almost 80 years old and is still going strong. In 2010, that was his last TV part. He played a part named Willie on a show called Medium Rare when he was 87 years old. Television had been around since the early 1950s, but that was the end of its run. Storch was in more than 200 movies and TV shows over the course of his long career. He worked all the time, from The Fall Guy to Married with Children. And it all started in the 1930s when a kid in New York dubbed and did sounds to make money. He didn't even finish high school, but he made a name for himself in Hollywood in a way that is hard to explain. People still knew him as Corporal Agarn, from Fault Trope, a part that earned him an Emmy nod and made him famous all over the world. Even after his last movie role, he lived for another 12 years. Passing away on July 8, 2022, 6 months before he would have been 100 years old. She had been married to him for 42 years before she died in 2003. Larry Storch showed that real ability doesn't go away through all the laughs, roles and years. It always shines in new ways.